The global artificial intelligence race has shifted. For 2 years, the focus was heavily placed on which companies could hoard the most advanced microchips. Today, the real bottleneck is finding enough raw electricity to actually turn those chips on. American tech giants are deploying hundreds of billions of dollars into physical infrastructure. They are signing decade-long contracts and locking down massive blocks of gigawatt power supply to ensure their AI training loops have the energy they need to run continuously. To understand the scale of that demand, you have to look at what a gigawatt actually means in the real world. Providing just 1 gigawatt of continuous power requires the equivalent output of a full-scale nuclear reactor. We are reaching the point where the infinite scaling of software hits a hard ceiling. The virtual world is strictly constrained by the physical limits of concrete, copper, and power generation. The United States power grid is completely unprepared to handle this surge in demand. With data center electricity usage projected to double by 2030, severe supply chain backlogs are forming. As tech companies consume the remaining capacity, everyday consumers face the threat of rising energy prices. This tension recently forced the White House to intervene directly, invoking the Defense Production Act to forcefully accelerate the expansion of the country's energy infrastructure. President Trump issued a presidential memo declaring a national emergency. His directive explicitly stated that domestic grid production and its upstream supply chains are now essential to the national defense. The act targets the specific industrial choke points slowing down grid expansion. It authorizes immediate financial support and purchase commitments for high-voltage circuit breakers, transmission lines, and the massive electrical transformers required to move power across the country. Securing the power grid escalated from a routine municipal utility problem into an urgent federal mandate. The hardware required to generate and move electricity is now treated as the foundation of American technological security. While the U.S. executes a massive infrastructure build-out, China is running a completely different playbook. Instead of brute forcing their way to intelligence with sheer energy, they are leaning into hyper-efficient software, most recently demonstrated by the release of the open-weight model DeepSeek V4. When tested against frontier American models on industry benchmarks, DeepSeek V4 performs incredibly well. It may trail slightly behind the absolute state-of-the-art on the hardest scientific problems, but for the vast majority of coding and enterprise tasks, it is essentially a tie. This chart shows the massive cost disparity. At under $2 per million tokens, DeepSeek operates at a fraction of American counterparts. This gap forces U.S. providers into a brutal race to the bottom, drastically slashing their prices to keep enterprise clients from migrating. This pressure trickles all the way down to the hardware level. We are already seeing companies like Meta sign multi-billion-dollar deals to rent specialized Amazon CPUs rather than standard power-hungry GPUs in a bid to execute AI workloads with greater energy efficiency. By releasing highly optimized code at basement prices, China is attacking the exact weakness of the American strategy. They are turning the massive capital and energy requirements of U.S. tech companies from a competitive moat into a financial liability. At the same time, the rules of investment are diverging sharply. While U.S. tech giants are freely pouring tens of billions of dollars into global partnerships, Beijing is aggressively walling off its domestic technology sector. Chinese officials have quietly issued directives enforcing strict new capital controls. They are instructing domestic AI startups to reject any investment capital from the United States unless it receives explicit government approval. We saw the clearest execution of this policy when regulators stepped in to block Meta's attempt to acquire the Beijing-based AI startup Manus for $2 billion, a deal that had been in the works for months. The official agency overseeing foreign investment blocked the transaction on national security grounds. Internally, Beijing viewed the acquisition as a coordinated effort to drain China of its top engineering talent and critical AI resources. These restrictions highlight a dual-pronged approach. Beijing is building a strict protectionist barrier around its own intellectual property and talent, all while continuing to flood the global market with heavily subsidized open-source AI tools. This setup creates a massive geopolitical vulnerability. If American CEOs look at their balance sheets and decide to build their corporate AI strategies on top of cheap Chinese models, those foreign systems become the operational bedrock of U.S. enterprise. Relying on that foreign foundation introduces immense risk. If Beijing decides to abruptly alter the architecture of those models or severs access entirely, The corporate networks dependent on them would instantly fracture and collapse. To defend against this, American tech companies have to isolate themselves from foreign pricing pressure by controlling every layer of the supply chain. That means vertically integrating everything from the design of custom silicon chips all the way down to securing exclusive contracts with nuclear power plants. The trillions of dollars currently driving the stock market to record highs reflect a permanent physical migration of capital into heavy industry. A massive expansion of the domestic power grid directly lowers the base cost of compute. By driving down the cost of electricity, the U.S. can render foreign pricing strategies irrelevant through sheer resource dominance. Upgrading power lines and securing raw energy is now the primary strategy for maintaining American technological sovereignty.